Hey, what's up, guys? So, John Cena Greatest Rivalries. This is going to be a full review of it. This is a really cool set. If you see the DVD menu, it's really awesome. It's kind of like a throwback to the old '80s arcade games. Just the overall music. It's just you just have to see it to really appreciate it. It's really, really cool. But I love the concept of this set. It's Cena's top 10 greatest rivalries, and they'll show 2 matches from each opponent, and Cena will talk a little bit about each guy, before every match. Some of the guys I thought they left out is Kurt Angle, number 1. I think Angle was probably Cena's most important rival, but I'm assuming they left it out because of either TNA or because of Angle's drug problems. I'm not sure. I still don't really know if Kurt Angle's come back to the WWE. I really had a tough time trying to do that video about Angle, but we'll see what happens with Kurt. But Brock Lesnar's another guy that I felt like could have been on here. I don't know why Brock wasn't there. Brock was really Cena's first big main event rival other than Kurt Angle. So yeah, so let's get right down to it. The first rivalry is Eddie Guerrero. I think the Eddie one could have been left out, but they were short matches, so they barely squeezed them on here. It was kind of a filler program that they did on SmackDown between SummerSlam and No Mercy 2003, but it was a lot of fun. The first match they show is the number 1 Contenders match from SmackDown. It was a tournament to challenge Brock Lesnar for the WWE title at Backlash 2003. So Cena goes over here in about 5 minutes. It was kind of like your standard television match, but the fun match on this set to check out is Eddie and Cena, the parking lot brawl. Cena cuts a wicked battle rap before that match. If you want to see Cena in his prime when he was a heel, I mean, it's just such a shame that we only got that Cena from 2003. I mean, it's scary to think how the potential of John Cena if he had just kept that heel persona, because it was just too good. It was too good looking back on it. But Eddie and Cena, this is when Chavo Guerrero came out, helped Eddie Guerrero win the parking lot brawl. This was a lot of fun. This is much better than Cena's parking lot brawl with JBL. This, Cena took out a lawnmower. They really did a lot of stunts on the cars. Eddie actually did a frog splash on one of the cars to get the win. So yeah, just a ton of fun right there. This match exemplifies how fun SmackDown was, back in 2003. As far as what Cena said about Eddie Guerrero, it's really not much, and it was so long ago since Eddie had passed away, and since they worked together, so there really wasn't much to say. He just said that he learned a lot from him. He soaked up everything like a sponge. There was times when Eddie Guerrero would say, "Don't ever fucking do that again," or "You got to do it like this." But overall, he says Eddie was very giving, and really, at that stage, he became more of a teacher. So nothing but love for Eddie Guerrero, and watching that parking lot brawl, it just really brings back good memories and makes you realize how much you love Eddie Guerrero. Next up we have Batista, the prototype versus Levithan. They show an OVW match. Both guys are really green at the time. At the time of Levithan, Batista was the OVW champion, and Jim Cornette was on commentary. He was way too hyper. This match was not really pretty. The production values are kind of crappy, but it's cool to see Cena and Batista in WWE developmental system. That Cena actually talked about how he compared the WWE developmental system at that time to like the Elway Marino quarterback class of '84. So yeah, and I agree. You have Randy Orton, Shelton Benjamin, Brock Lesnar, Batista, John Cena. It was just a stacked class of all guys that were fans of the Attitude Era coming in to the WWE to become wrestlers. So yeah, as far as Batista goes, he said that the cool thing that was interesting about the feud is they were both successful on separate brands. On WrestleMania 21, Brock Lesnar, I'm sorry, Batista became the champion of Raw, and Cena became the champion of SmackDown, and then they both flip-flopped. So they were pretty much separated for a good, 3 to 4 years before they ever touched. They first touched at SummerSlam 2008, but they showed a match here from Extreme Rules 2010 Last Man Standing match, Batista versus Cena. And this match is a lot of fun, actually. You know, Cena's had so many Last Man Standing matches, but they're all pretty much fun. I mean, Batista took a lot of bumps here, man. He took an attitude adjustment, a pretty high attitude adjustment through a table. That was crazy. A lot of stuff with the tables, a very creative finish with, you know, I thought it was creative, duct taping Batista so he couldn't stand up for the 10 count. I thought that was pretty creative, but you know, that was Cena and Batista from Extreme Rules 2010, Last Man Standing. Let's see, what was next? What was the next rivalry? Shawn Michaels. Michaels and Cena. All right, so they showed the WrestleMania rematch from England, non-title, right before Backlash 2007. This almost went an hour. This was by far the best match of 2007. I actually like the WrestleMania match better, but this is definitely most people think it's the WWE match of the year for 2007. A lot of it has to do with Shawn Michaels finally getting the win back. I felt like it went a little long. I felt like it probably could have been better if they kept it shorter, but yeah, man, HBK getting the win. He actually, you know, once again, just a beautiful counter to the attitude adjustment with Shawn landing on his feet and hitting the super kick. So there we go with that. Next up we have probably the worst Shawn Michaels and John Cena match. You know, they had the two matches from 2007. Then they had a few good matches on Raw in 2009 when JBL and Shawn Michaels were working as a team because, you know, Shawn, the economy went bad and Shawn had to start working for JBL when they were doing that storyline. But in 2008, they had a match on Raw right before WrestleMania 24. So it was Cena versus Michaels, and Cena had just won the Rumble and come back from the pectoral injury. So Cena was very rusty here. This might have been the worst I've ever seen Cena look. You know, him and Michaels, I just didn't think they had very good chemistry here. It was sort of botchy and ended in a DQ with Randy Orton coming out to build tension for the WrestleMania 24 triple threat match. So there we go with that. Definitely the very short Michaels and Cena match too. Probably the worst match on the whole, one of the weakest matches on the set, I would say. So next up, after Shawn Michaels, let me see who else that they had on here. Randy Orton. So that sets up the Randy Orton feud. So yeah, they show the match with Cena versus Orton, SummerSlam 2007. I thought that was a fun match. I thought at SummerSlam 2007, that's when people really were invested in seeing an Orton Cena match. That's before it was totally done overkill. So Cena goes over Orton and retains the title. A lot of people were shocked about that at the time, but that's what it was. And then they fast forward 7 years later, and you get to see Cena versus Orton from Raw, right before Elimination Chamber this past year. You know, they had just come off that crappy match at the Rumble when just nobody was interested in seeing Cena and Orton wrestle again. And they kind of redeemed themselves from the Rumble. You could tell that all the heat that Orton got at the Rumble for being boring or whatever, it totally got to him, and you could tell they both stepped up their game, and they put on a really awesome and exciting match here, I thought. So Cena goes over Orton, and it was a non-title match, but you know, I thought that was probably one of their better matches from this past year on Raw. So there we go with that. So next up we have JBL. You know what? As far as Cena talking about Orton, it was kind of weird. He compared him to Shawn Michaels. He said that Shawn Michaels, Randy Orton is kind of like the Shawn Michaels of just this generation. And I don't know if I really agree with that. You know, I think Orton is talented, but I think a lot of people find him very repetitive and very, very boring sometimes. Personally, for me, I would watch a John Cena match over a Randy Orton match any day of the week. That's just how I feel right now. But yeah, you know, Cena and Orton, it's one of those, both those guys, you know, they're always going to be compared to each other because they're both young and they're both, you know, they were both younger and they were both, you know, somewhat attractive to the female demographic, some would say. So they're always going to run parallel together to that. So Cena talked about that. So we move on to JBL. Bradshaw. So it's a pretty big rivalry for Cena because Cena did win the belt from JBL at WrestleMania 21. He compared Bradshaw to like Vince Lombardi, you know, like one of those hard-nosed coaches that was going to, bring it. He said JBL was very, very rough, very stiff. But at that time, Cena got used to it because he had been in the ring with so many veterans. So he said JBL is not easy to work with, in a good way, in a very respectful way, because if you don't bring it, he's going to make you bring it. So yeah, the WrestleMania 21 match, I know behind the scenes, both Cena and JBL were frustrated and disappointed about the lack of time that they got. A lot of it had to do with, Michaels and Angle running a little bit longer than expected. So they show the WrestleMania 21 match, which is kind of Cena winning in convincing fashion. And they show another Cena JBL match from Raw from 2008, right before Night of Champions. So at Night of Champions, Cena actually faced Triple H. Triple H was actually the champion. And actually, Triple H was actually on commentary for this match. But, Cena and JBL, they had another, it was kind of a filler feud in 2008 when Cena wasn't really doing much. He wasn't the champion. This is when JBL was that bully on Raw. This match ended in a, It was a very short match. I think Cena won with a roll-up. It just wasn't anything spectacular. But, if you're looking for a great Cena JBL match, they only had one great match. That would be the I Quit match from Judgment Day 2005. So next up we have Chris Jericho. Jericho is a big deal for Cena. Even Jericho talked about it in his book, how, he always pushed for John Cena. He always thought he saw something special in Cena. He actually put Cena over in Cena's first pay-per-view match at Vengeance 2002. So while everyone kind of gave up on Cena and thought he didn't really have much, Jericho was the one who really thought he had something to offer. So nothing but nice words to say about Jericho, and nothing but great things to say about Jericho on Cena's behalf. I really feel like, Cena and Jericho should have been in a main event title match. I think at WrestleMania 25, when Jericho was the champion, he just came off of that great feud with Michaels. I think, maybe Jericho heading into WrestleMania as the champion, taking on Shawn Michaels. I think that would have been the answer in 2009. But they had a great rivalry in 2005. Eric Bischoff was in cahoots with Jericho. And so they had a great match at SummerSlam. So on this set, they showed the loser gets fired, the You're Fired match from Raw. So, Cena actually pins Jericho with the F5. And then Jericho, cries for his job back. And then he gets escorted away by security. And Jericho's just bitching and crying like a little girl. So, yeah, that was a great moment. And a lot of people prefer that match over the SummerSlam match. And I know Jericho does and Vince McMahon does, as Jericho mentioned in his book. So next up, we have a pretty underrated match. I remember at the time, a lot of people thought Cena was rusty and kind of, just not quite there yet. Jericho was champion. He just came off the great feud with Michaels, and Cena had just gotten injured at SummerSlam by Batista. Batista broke his neck from the Batista bomb. I'm not sure if that was a storyline, if that was a work, but Cena had just come off of neck surgery, so he returns at Survivor Series, doesn't even show up on Raw. First match back, he beats Jericho for the title. But watching this match back again, it was solid, man. It was you could definitely tell Cena was a little bit sloppy here, but I thought Jericho carried Cena to a great match. Cena's a great worker, but I felt like Jericho had to work extra hard just to keep things crisp. And I thought they told a great story. It was a nice roller coaster ride of a match. It was a long style main event type match, and Jericho doesn't really get to wrestle those matches that often. I thought Jericho and Cena from Armageddon the next month was shorter and just a little bit better executed. But the Survivor Series match, I felt like it's a classic, main event style match. Crowd really was. It didn't have the type of Cena heat that your usual crowd has. They were actually in Cena's hometown of Boston. Maybe that's why. So Cena definitely had more of the crowd on his side. And it's just a testament to how great Jericho was as a heel, that the fans really weren't cheering for him at all there. So that was the end of Disc 1. Yeah, so we'll move on to Disc 2. We get Triple H. Cena's had nothing but he has nothing but nice things to say about everybody. He really didn't shoot at all. If anyone was looking for Cena to shoot on any of his opponents, probably the closest one you'll get is The Rock but I'll talk more about that later. As far as Triple H goes, he just said he's the measuring stick, and you really can't say you've really done anything in this business unless you wrestled, Triple H out of WrestleMania or have gotten that stamp of approval from Triple H. So they show the match from WrestleMania 22, Triple H versus Cena. I think Triple H versus Cena from 22 is the classic match of, or a great example of a match that wouldn't have been that great without the crowd. I think that and Rock versus Hogan, those are those two matches that you could look at and say, you take away the crowd, they probably would have been fucked. It probably would have been similar to Triple H Batista from 21, or maybe Triple H Jericho from WrestleMania 18. So there we go with that. And so the other Triple H match that they show is Cena versus Triple H from October 2009. This was right before the Bragging Rights pay-per-view where Cena faced Orton in an Iron Man match. But Triple H and Cena on Raw. This was when Triple H was in DX. This is good. This was a nice roller coaster style of a match. Cena actually had taken 3 pedigrees. Triple H actually goes over. It just seems to me like the only one that would have been pushed in favor of Cena would have been Triple H, and we definitely saw that in 2008. And even some cases, 2009, like you see right here. But this had a lot of kickouts. I wouldn't say it was great, but the false finishes really made it unpredictable and kept the crowd on their seats, so on the edge of their seats. So there we go with that. Next up, we have Edge, the old shoe, as Cena refers to Edge. Really interesting sound bites here. He actually talked about how Edge has an interesting story because there were people that really didn't think he was ready. Apparently his title run was supposed to be just 1 month, and that was going to be it. There were no plans for him ever to win the title back, but he thought the great thing about Edge is if you just give him a chance, he kept making the best out of every situation. Got the great ratings, put on better matches than expected, and slowly but surely there was a demand to see Edge as champion again. So and he always compared Edge to like an old shoe. It's like whenever they, went back and wrestled each other, it always felt so natural. So just nothing but great things to say about Edge. Edge and Cena, one of the best rivalries. When it comes down to it, it probably is, Cena's greatest rival is probably Edge. So the matches that they show are a steel cage match from Raw. So Cena had just won the belt back at the TLC pay-per-view in Unforgiven 2006. So a couple weeks later on Raw, they had a steel cage match. It was good, your typical Edge and Cena action. Cena goes over with an attitude adjustment thanks to the help of what happened? Cade and Murdoch came out, and DX came out to make the save. And as they made the save, Shawn Michaels actually super kicked Cade and Murdoch into the steel cage door and hit Edge as he was trying to come out. So Shawn Michaels cost Cena the match. So this is the match that caused Edge to form Rated RKO. So next up, after Edge, we have The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. One of the interesting things that Cena said about The Rock is that he wanted The Rock to be at his best, which is one of the reasons why he was so hard on him in the interviews and even some of the shoot style, battle raps that he did. He really wanted to bring the best out of him, and he said he felt like he got The Rock in his prime, and he felt like he got The Rock at the top of his game. And I would agree somewhat with that. They actually showed the question and answer segment when Mick Foley, Dusty Rhodes, Bret Hart, and Booker T were, asking Cena and Rock questions. And I thought it was, looking back on it, I thought it was a great segment. They really touched on The Rock's past. Cena said that The Rock had never failed, and The Rock brought up how he had so much perseverance when he first got into the WWE, and talked about how when he was 23 years old trying to, make it in the Canadian Football League, how he had to sleep on crappy mattresses, and how it just had a lot of great emotion to it. Just a lot of great emotion from The Rock, and I thought Cena was great as well on it. It was pretty much the only great thing that they did leading up to WrestleMania 29. Then they showed the WrestleMania 29 match with Rock as champion, Cena coming in as the challenger. Everyone knows how I feel about the match. A lot of people thought it was, it won Match of the Year from the Slammy Awards, but, if the general consensus in the IWC is that it didn't need to happen again. a lot of people thought the match felt very forced. They tried to have a better match than they had at 28, but for some reason the WrestleMania 28 match in Miami just had a better atmosphere and just felt a little bit less forced. I would say that. I think 29 would have worked better if you had Cena coming in as champion and then Rock going for the belt at WrestleMania, as opposed to already having The Rock beat CM Punk and for him to be champion for a couple months. I just didn't think that worked. I think in retrospect, you probably have Cena go over Punk and Cena going into WrestleMania as champion. But overall, I just think Rock and Cena, too, just didn't need to have a rematch. So the CM Punk, you didn't get to see CM Punk. But CM Punk is a Blu-ray exclusive. They showed 2 matches from Raw. They showed one from 2009 when Punk joined this. This is when Punk was really starting the Straight Edge Society. He cut a great promo before the match about how Thanksgiving was coming up and most of the people in the crowd are fat. They're going to eat dessert. They're going to overdose on gluttony. But he said, I'm straight edge and I'm better than you because I know how to control myself. So just a great promo from Punk. I think some of CM Punk's best work was when he was in the Straight Edge Society, looking back on it. But, Cena and Punk, this didn't have the typical energy that some of their later matches had. Cena actually wins the match with the attitude adjustment. But, still good stuff between Cena and Punk on Raw. It's a match that I don't remember. I don't remember watching. But, that was good stuff. And the final match that they show is Punk versus Cena from Raw. Most people thought it was the match of the year from 2013 with Cena going over Punk. This was for the main event of WrestleMania spot, but Punk actually ended up losing. This has had a tremendous amount of near falls from what I remember. I mean, attitude adjustment, go to sleep, just very unpredictable. Well, not really unpredictable, but they really, they really had everyone sold in this match. There's just so many times when you thought it was over and it just wasn't. Pleasantly, probably the best, one-on-one singles match on Raw that I think we've ever seen is Cena versus Punk. So you get that on Blu-ray right there. So, as far as what Cena said about Punk, really nothing interesting. I mean, he just said that Cena's more of a fan of the overall brand, while Punk is more of a fan of the overall wrestling. He did mention that, but as far as that, really nothing much else to say. There's some Blu-ray exclusives of WWE 2K14 behind the scenes with John Cena, and that's pretty much it, guys. CM Punk Greatest Rivalries. Enjoyed it. I thought it was a cool concept. I could understand if some people are sick of seeing Cena releases, but it is what it is, and take it easy.